Welcome to the garden at Pineola Farms. One of the things that we've grown here at Pineola for over 20 years are our irises, and we absolutely love our bearded irises. On a recent trip to England, when we attended the Chelsea Flower Show, we realized that our irises needed attention, that our irises had gotten way overcrowded, and it was time to divide them up and give them some attention so we could have blooms like this, like what we saw at the Chelsea Flower Show. So, like I said, our mounds were getting too crowded and they needed to be divided up. So I'm going to show you how we did that. And first off, I want to show you the tools that we used to make this project happen. First are my gloves. I can't hardly do anything without my gloves. And then you're going to need a pair of cutters. I love this little shovel that's heart-shaped. It really digs really well. And then I've got two pair of forks here. One is a two forked and the other's four. And you can tell there's a difference in the length because some of my rhizomes are a lot deeper than the others. And then, of course, my knee pad. So let's get started. The first thing that we're going to want to do is kind of determine which clump we want to divide. And this is the first clump that I want to tackle. And this is a really good project to do in late spring or early fall. And it will not hinder your blooms for the following year. But as you can see here, these are extremely crowded. Irises don't like to be this crowded. And what happens is all of those fronds shade their root system, and their root system actually needs sun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my forks and I'm going to go underneath and I'm going to pry them up. Now, I did all of this with my hand forks, but if you need to, you could use a larger fork that you actually stand on to push down into the soil. But I was able to do this with my handhelds. But you can see here how much trouble I'm having getting them up, and that's because they're too deep. Irises don't like to be that deep in the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to get up this entire pile of irises. I'm going to dig them all up, and then I'm going to replace them. You can see as I get them up what great root systems they have. They have really, really good root systems. So that lets me know that my tubers are really healthy and that I've got some really good plants here. And I'm going to weed them out as I do that. Like if I've got a little one like this, I'm not going to keep that. I have enough big, healthy fronds. Although, to be quite honest, if I wanted to give that to a friend, that would really be a good gift. That would get them started in their irises. Now, these, like this one, has a long tuber on it. So that one on the side there doesn't have any good root systems. It's useless. It's not doing anything. So you can use your cutters to cut it away. Or some of them, if you just want to, you can just twist it and it pops right off. So that's my healthy plant that I've got. And the tuber, we're just going to trash. Don't need it anymore. If it doesn't have a lot of roots coming off of it, then it's really not a good tuber to keep. So I'm just going to continue to do this with this bed. I'm going to get them all up. As I'm doing it, I'm kind of cleaning them off, but you can see how deep they are. And they've been in for about 3 years. So you want to do this about every 3 years to your irises. And when we put those in, I think we may have put in 3. And you can see now how many plants we've got. And it's because they multiply that way. And again, they get overcrowded and they just don't like it. And then what happens is the soil starts to build up on their tubers. And then if their tubers aren't on the surface, which you'll see in a few minutes, then they're also not going to produce and bloom. As you can tell now, Curry's come in to give me a hand, although I think really and truly he's in the way. I can't get that cat to do much of anything. So I've leveled off everything where I want to put them back. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to determine, okay, I want the sun to hit the tubers. And so I don't want the foliage on that iris to block the sun. So that means that all of my tubers need to be facing one direction. It means that they need all to be headed so that they can get the sun. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all of the green off, and I'm going to do it in a V shape. I'm going to do that for a couple of reasons. One, it keeps the rain from running off. And again, like I'm saying, I want that tuber to get sun, and especially early on. I'm going to throw all that foliage away because that plant, we're kind of stressing this plant We've dug it up out of the ground. Now we're replanting it. So it doesn't need to protect or nourish all that greenery. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut it off. We're going to make less work for that root. We're going to give that root time to establish itself before it has to work so hard to maintain its foliage. So again, we're going to cut them all at a fan. Look how great and healthy these roots are. I mean, they're really good. Now, when I plant them, I'm going to plant them so that that tuber is exposed. You can see here, I'm not putting dirt on top of that tuber, but I am really running my fingers in and underneath that tuber so that I'm not having any air pockets around those roots, okay? I don't want any air pockets around those roots. So I really pack it in really good. So I'm just going to go through and get all of these planted in this little section. And you guys saw how many I pulled out of here. So that means I'm going to have a lot left over. So just going to continue to do this. And as you can see, that cat is still not helping me in any shape, form, fashion. But I guess he's just there as good company. Although I do like having a cat in the garden because a lot of times they ward off snakes. Anyhow, this is my lantana, my low-growing lantana, and it blooms usually in May and June. Irises like to bloom the end of March and April here in Georgia. So I'm thinking that I would love for my irises to bloom, and then when my irises are spent, then my lantana will take over. So I'm going to take some of those irises that I divided over there because I have an awful lot left over, and I'm going to plant them in and around this lantana. So in the spring, I'm going to have a great bed of irises right here, and then as the irises stop producing, my lantana will take shape. And I love gardening that way. I love having something for every season in an area so that we've got continuous blooms. It makes it really, really nice. So what I'm doing here is I'm just digging me some holes so that I can get those irises in and kind of spreading them out a little bit. And again, I'm going to do the same thing that I showed you before. I'm going to take and cut off anything broke, and I'm going to cut at an angle. Okay. Talk a little bit about why I cut at an angle because it's important, is the rain will run off then, okay? If I were to cut it straight across, then what's going to happen is that rain is going to puddle on the top, it's going to run down that frond, and then it's going to help rot my tuber, and I don't want to do that. So if I take and cut them at an angle, then what happens is that rain just runs off of those onto either side and not down onto my tuber. So anyhow, we're going to do that, and we're going to get all these planted in and around this lantana. I'm going to space them out really good. Again, I'm looking to see where that sun is because I do not want that tuber to be shaded by its own greenery. Okay, so I want that tuber to be in the sun, and I want to be sure to pack it. So you can see here that I am leaving that tuber exposed. A lot of people think that you've got to bury that tuber. Don't. It needs to be on the top, okay? So what I'm doing there is just spreading my roots out and covering them up on either side. Sometimes those tubers are so heavy, you really worry that it is not going to stay. It's going to fall over, that what roots you have are not going to keep it down. A lot of people use a metal pin. I've got a piece of willow here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it, and I'm going to form a big U, and then I'm going to take and I'm going to cut the two ends at an angle. So I've got 2 points on that. And then I'm going to use it much as a peg or a stake, and I'm going to run it down around the neck of that iris, and I'm going to push it all the way down in the ground. And that is going to hold my iris in place. And once that iris is established, then that willow will take and have rotted and become compost. A lot of people use pieces of wire to do that. I don't want to find wire in my garden later. So that little bit of that willow really is an easy fix for me. It's an easy way for me to keep those anchored. It's a really good thing to do if you've got tubers that don't have much root system. because the roots are what keep it in place. So doing that is using that little piece of willow or anything that's biodegradable that will go away as a little U to hold them down. So you can see what I'm doing here is all around those lantana. There are 3 lantana there, and I'm just putting this in and around those lantana so that this spring, the next spring, I'm going to have a beautiful array of irises there. And like I said, once those irises are spent or done, then what will happen is that lantana will be emerging about that time, and then it will start to bloom. So I've mounted a little bit of dirt in the middle, laid my roots over it, and then I've packed them in. So now I've got all of my irises in place. So that one clump that I divided has now filled 2 spots in my garden. After I've got them in, I'm going to give them a good watering. Okay, and you probably want to water them every other day or every 3rd day for the first little bit to get them established. Okay, if you're doing this in the fall, you probably won't have to do it as much. But again, you want that root to be showing. Okay, don't cover it all up, and cut your fronds at an angle. So guys, I sure hope this helped. I can't wait to see what your irises look like. I hope ours look this good next year. We'll keep you posted. Thanks for following along.